So, as per the schedule, our session is supposed to start now. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Kate Berseneva. I'm a moderator of this roundtable session. Can you hear me correctly, everyone?
Yes.
Super. As you know, we all gathered today to discuss an important topic, the role of women in science. I'm representing both University of Exeter and STEM Global scientific community. STEM Global is a scientific platform that bridges communities in science and business. The aim and mission of the STEM Global is to support young talents, early career researchers, and to bring more diversity into the scientific world. We all know that women tend to choose not to study science, right? And the main reason for that is the pattern that is formed in our society that bulky mathematics calculations in labs and experiments is not a woman's path. I think we all experience that being kids. I believe that all female scientists who are presented today, all you at our round table, have experienced teaching, right? And I guess the majority of us also experience what I have experienced, that when we teach undergraduate students, they instinctively expect that we are supposed to be serious middle-aged male, and they're surprised when they see women teaching. So therefore, I believe that our priority and mutual goal is to break the stereotypes and to break this wrong pattern, and to be an example of a successful female scientist who can inspire a diverse next generation of physicists, mathematicians, engineers, and to bring them to our society. So let me introduce you, and please welcome our 5 speakers, our 5 excellent female researchers and scientists. A few words about the roundtable. Each of the speakers will give a talk of 7 minutes long, approximately. Then, when all talks are performed, we will start the questions and answer session. So everyone in the session could raise a question and ask. And then everyone who is listening to us online can also ask a question. So let's jump to the listening to speakers, right? And our first speaker is Dr. Ann-Katrin Mishel. She is a lecturer and postdoctoral researcher from the ETH Zurich, Switzerland. And the name of her talk is Women-Only Faculty Openings, Blessing or Curse. Please.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Yes.
So it's very, as maybe many speakers here have this motivation, it's very personal, and I would like to just share some impressions of the last couple of weeks that I had. But first, as a background, so maybe that everyone knows maybe also what the ingredients are to become a scientist. So I'm a materials scientist, but I was also trained in physics. I was born in Germany in the late 80s, and my mom had an engineering diploma, so maybe that's always a good ingredient in that sense. My dad in economy, but it didn't work in science. And in school, I graduated with a major in mathematics, physics, and literature. I had a scholarship for philosophy and literature, but decided to follow the other fascination, the passion for science. And so I got a master's in material science from Aachen University, and also my PhD there. But I also tried to have some international experience. So I went to Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratories for my master thesis. And during my PhD, I was a visiting scientist at Stanford. And the last couple of years, I'm lucky to be at ETH in Zurich in Switzerland as a postdoc, and since 2 years as a lecturer. But since these are only temporary contracts, I'm now in the state where I apply for faculty positions. And one of them brought me to the topic I would like to raise here real quickly. So I applied for many positions in the Netherlands, and my last campus visit last week actually was at the TU in Eindhoven, so the Technical University at Eindhoven. And if you were a little bit on Twitter or in some newspapers, you maybe have seen, yeah, I also forgot to mention I was in mentoring programs, which I think also is an important ingredient, but sorry for skipping that. So coming back to Eindhoven, if you browse a little bit about the university, then you come across these news. So last year, they started this program where they only allowed women to apply for faculty positions. And since it's a technical university, mostly STEM positions. And the reasoning was as follows. They said we start July 2019, in 2019, to only allow women to apply for the first 6 months of the opening. And if they don't find any suitable candidate, then men are also allowed to apply. And they combine that with a nice program, and they call it the Irene Curie Fellowship, which gives you a nice starting package. So additional money, and you have a bit more freedom in research, as far as I understood. While this is quite radical, because it's like for everyone who applies for faculty positions there, another university in the Netherlands already started that. So TU Delft had in 2012-13 a program where they hired 10 faculty positions, only women. And they also had this nice additional package that was supposed to attract even the best female candidates they can get. And also just on Twitter, I found that the University of Sydney, they also have openings here for these postdoc positions where they say they do target recruitment for women. So male applicants aren't allowed to apply for these positions. A funny side note is for all of these positions, it was reported that men applied anyway. The question is about why is this actually important and why should we take such radical measures? And one idea is that there's no question we need more diversity, since diverse teams lead to better results, as many studies showed. But also, interestingly, and I didn't really consider that before so much, a broader perspective helps. For example, in medical research, it has been shown that actually more men suffer from osteoporosis, and it hasn't been studied so much. So even a diverse angle on research is important. And the same with, for example, heart attacks. That has been studied for men a lot, but not so much for women. And apparently heart attacks have very different signs for women. And so more women can actually die from heart attacks because they haven't been diagnosed so early. So it's a mixture of diverse teams for better results and also diverse perspectives. And there's another reason that, and this is also mattered for me, that it has been found that women often lack confidence to apply. And I have to say, I applied now for the electrical engineering department, and I wouldn't have applied for that department if it wouldn't have been open for women or advertised like that. Because I always thought, yeah, physics is a bit, I don't know, more open, diverse. So I at least saw or know some female physics professors, but electrical engineering to me seemed even more male dominated in a way, and I wasn't confident enough to apply for it without this specific position. But because of this Irene Curie Fellowship, I applied because it opened it to me a bit more. And with that, even if we don't have female faculty in these departments now, we can open it a bit more, that the students can actually see there are female professors, and I could only be one if I want to. I don't have to, but it's actually possible. And at Eindhoven, they found that it actually, up to now, it worked if we just look at the numbers. So they started, and that was a bit their issue, with the lowest numbers in the Netherlands at all. So 16–15% for the lower faculty ranges. And now they even hired 29 more assistant professors, female ones, but they also hired men. So it didn't lead to the exclusion of men as it has been maybe thought of in the beginning. And they have the goal that they only stop at 30% female staff. And I think the most important part is then also tenured. So it's not just to open it for women, but then no one gets a tenure. So their goal is to have really associate and full professors with a tenure who are women at all their technical facilities. However, they faced a bit of backlash. So there were, I think, 50 men sued them for sexual discrimination for this opening of the position. And I think they had to adjust a little bit, but the program is still running. But still, it's quite, to me, seems like a radical measure. And I think we should discuss or think about that. Is this the best way to get the best researchers for these positions? And do these hired women, do they have to suffer from a little bit this like mark that you were just hired because of the program, or is everyone looking at them as like an equal member of the staff? Do we at the same time discriminate men? Maybe it was a different discrimination before, but is this really the way to go now? And can we also find better ways, especially long-term, because this doesn't seem like something we should do in the long run. But however, I think to conclude a bit, my impression I had, if this is a way where we can actually have more women as faculty, then we can make it a habit, and then maybe we don't need quota anymore or anything, because it just seems quite natural that we have very diverse teams. However, I think it's difficult to fight one exclusion with another. And also it has to be discussed how we open this for non-binary candidates, how we open it for all ethnic minorities and all diverse religious backgrounds. So in general, it needs to go beyond just women or men. It has to go towards the best researcher, the best mentor for the position, no matter where you come from, no matter which gender you are. Yeah, but if this is the right measure, I don't have an answer. I see the advantages, but I also see the drawbacks. So I hope this sparks a bit the discussion later on. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Let's thank our speaker. I think you're raising a very interesting perspective and question about if we turn on for the just diversity questions, if we will just be including only women applications. So it could also balance to the different form of in diversity. So we will be aggravating the place of male scientists in a society. But probably you're right that at first it will be a bit superficial. So we will be opening positions for women. And then once the balance is more or less in the right position, we can start living a normal life back.
But still, I think it's difficult because I had the discussion with some of these professors who were actually now hired, and some of my coworkers who are all male, and they said they also feel a bit like they have no chance now in this generation a bit because they are, I don't know, a white male who isn't very much wanted right now, which I can also see, and I think it sparks a bit competition, which maybe shouldn't be emphasized more. So it's a delicate case, definitely.
I agree with you. Okay, so let's go further for our second speaker. It's a Dr. Daria Kozlova. She is the first vice rector of the ITMO University from Russia, and her talk is called Beyond Gender Equality, ITMO's Progress Drivers. Please.
Good evening, everybody. Very pleased to be here. And yes, I'm a proud member of ITMO University. I'm responsible for education and international development at ITMO University. And for the last 6 years, I work for this university and absolutely happy with being in ITMO team. And actually, my PhD is in economics. And I didn't expect that metamaterials will bring me to this roundtable online discussion about gender equality. But this is actually the thing that we love about ITMO University, because there are new, opportunities and new challenges everywhere. And at ITMO, we were brave enough about 5 years ago to bring love among our main values. And to bring love means for us to have a fusion of rational and emotional in one place. And love is one of our main driver. And saying life, I mean inspiration, and I mean creating new and changing the world. And it was interesting experience to agree on values, and love is one of them, in leading technical university in Russia, leading IT university in Russia, and the university that was the main university for Russian defense and military services in Soviet times. But as our good friend Bertil Anderson, the former president of Nanyang Technological University, says, change means change, and ITMO University is changing right now rapidly. I would love to go closer to the topic. I've learned a lot about this gender equality issues because I didn't expect that the topic is so hot. Actually, I do not feel it myself, honestly. But as I learned, 80% of purchase made by women, and I do understand that shopping is something absolutely irrational. It's a rational behavior, and definitely technology and new goods should be created by ladies as well as by gentlemen. In my university, gender balanced teams have much more fruitful climate inside of the team, and much more interesting conversation and positive communication. I can feel that and I can see that. And for example, international conferences in bioinformatics have much more strong networking than in maths because of good quality of networking and communication, again, because of gender equality. And my personal point is that definitely ladies can bring more inspiration and love to the team. And I would start from Soviet Union because a lot of work about gender equality was done in Soviet Union. Actually, in order to experience the Soviet attitude to gender equality in full, please spend a couple hours of your life watching the Soviet movie Moscow Doesn't Believe in Tears. By the way, this is the first ever Russian movie to get an Oscar. And it movie gives you the idea of how extricated the aspect of gender equality was in Soviet Union, and gives you an insight of how today's Russian mentality is highly influenced still by this this challenge. But I would love to now say what we as leading STEM, leading technical university have to say and have to do. We have 40% female now today at ITMO University, with the balance of 35-65 in computer science and 50-50 in the entrepreneurship. And I can say that in 2010, 2009, 2011, when we had over 70% of male in the classroom, we heard swearing and cursing every day in the classroom. And I don't think that we are happy with the statistics today, but because if I take a look to the group leaders and to the IPs, the percentage would be 90-10. And what I think we can do, I can assure you that we will not do quoting within the student recruitment. This is for sure not the way ITMO will go, but we will involve school kids and especially girls in our extracurricular activities. We will teach girls how to do programming, and this is our way to involve school kids in STEM. We will support their success and inspire school kids and ladies to take on complicated and challenging tasks. So we want to change the stereotypes, and we will absolutely check the results, but not the process. And I'm sure that what we can do at ITMO University, we can highlight our female success and give a sign to school kids that robotics, for example, is an amazingly interesting field, because who can make emotionally competent robots better than a girl? We as a university do not have struggle with a balanced gender today, but we can shape the profile of our applicants by in 2037, supporting the female programmers, the female in robotics. I think what we can do is to communicate to the world our position and to tell the world about female success, about latest in programming, about first-year student who won the biggest contest in information security and got a scholarship to study at ITMO University. I think we need to bring more interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary to the campus to make students from science communication to work together with the students from physics and photonics. And I think this way, to give a sign to the school kids, we can ensure that in 2037, our newcomers will be, the student body profile will be more balanced. At ITMO, we, as most of you, we compete for 2% most talented students in the world. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to promote equal opportunities today to attract more talented students by 2030. But what else is important, that by 2030, 75% of STEM-related students will be in BRICS countries, and they will be from BRICS countries. And I think that we need to carefully bring this dialogue to the BRICS countries, because the concentration of STEM-related students is going to be there according to the global academic agenda. And I do believe that working today, we can change the future and have more balanced student body profile, because sky is the limit. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. We will come back to all of the aspects during our Q&A session. So, and now please welcome our third speaker, Dr. Sylvie Lebrun. She's associate professor at the Institut d'Optique of the Grand School of France in Paris. And she will give us the perspective of being a scientist in France. And her talk is Short Testimony of a French Woman Researcher in a Man's World. Please. Sylvie?
Yes,
Super.
I'm sharing my screen. Is it okay?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, thank you. So good evening to everybody. And first of all, thank you very much to the organizers for this invitation to this roundtable. And here is the outline of my talk. After a presentation of my professional career, I will share with you my own feelings about my place as a woman in scientific research in France. Then I will show you some figures about gender equality in research in France and in my environment. And in the third part, I will shortly present some initiatives that were taken at different levels. So after undergraduate studies in math and sciences, I obtained an engineering diploma in electronics in 1999, then a master in photonics in 2000, and I made my PhD in physics on lasers at the Laboratoire Charles Fabry de l'Institut d'Optique in the University Paris-Saclay. And after 1 year of postdoc in Paris, I obtained a permanent position as a lecturer in the lab of my PhD. And last March, I got my accreditation to direct researches, which is just a French diploma that allows you to present for a professor position. So as a lecturer, you know that I spend half of my time delivering courses to engineering students in optics, and the other half is dedicated to research, write projects to get fundings, and supervision of graduated students. My research is mainly experimental and is in the field of nonlinear optics in optical fibers. So I think I'm not in that position by chance at all. In fact, I grew up in a scientific family. My parents were both researchers, as well as my three brothers. And among all the scientific discussions there were at home, I have always been fascinated by lasers from an aesthetic point of view because of the pure colors that they deliver, but also by all the amazing things they were able to do in medicine, arts, and so on. And my first scientific disappointment was to hear that laser swords cannot exist. But never mind, and I found very funny to explain to my friends the reason why. So, moreover, I was very attracted by teaching, and very soon I knew I wanted to become a lecturer. But my problem was that during my studies before the master, I have always thought that I was not gifted in physics. I had good marks in math and French, but not so good in physics. So I was encouraged by my teachers and my parents to do a business school. But I chose to perseverate in sciences studies. I was so motivated to manipulate, fabricate, and understand lasers that I decided to do a master in photonics. And in that master, I had the chance to benefit from several excellent teachers, and I think they gave me more confidence in my skills in physics. So I find my job highly demanding, but really, really rich. You are never bored, you learn new things almost every day, you are free to decide your own schedule. As a lecturer, I also like the contact with the students. It makes you keep your feet on the ground. So since always, I have been in a men's world, now also at home because I have 2 little boys. But during my career, I don't have the feeling to have been discriminated against as a woman. But of course, I cannot ignore that as everywhere else, science is also dominated by white males over 40 to 60 years old. Not discriminated, but I sometimes suffer from sexist remarks from male colleagues. And also, I am often the only woman in research meetings. And I frequently have the unpleasant feeling that you probably know to be transparent and inaudible. I have also noticed that in general, I was the only people to be rudely interrupted by one of these men, as if there was a sort of group effect, because taken one by one, they are very kind. So with the experience, I now prefer to ignore such behaviors, and I do my best to stay focused on my objectives, even if sometimes it's quite hard to keep relaxed. So France is a bad pupil in terms of gender equality in research in general, and in STEM in particular. I would like to share with you some figures. You can see on this table that we are at the second last place for the percentage of women in research in Europe, with a score of 25%. And this second graph here represents the gender proportion of permanent lecturers for all university sections. And you can see that in engineering, physics, and math, this score is even lower, with only 19% of women in engineering, which is my section. So the third graph on the right here shows the difference between the difference in salaries between men and women PhD students from my institute, and below you can see the maximum and minimum salary. In fact, I was really surprised that there was already a gap in PhD, and this gap was explained by the fact that some students make their PhD in the industry, so they had to negotiate their salary, and one knows that women are not good at that exercise. So the situation in France is not good. The change in mentalities is very slow. But we observe since, let's say, 5 to 10 years, a political will on a growing number of individual and collective initiatives to make things move. In 2019, so last year, a law in public function was adopted to build an action plan in favor of professional equality between genders. So the goals are to evaluate, to prevent, to deal with salary differential, and to guarantee equal access to jobs and grades. So for each institute of higher education, a kind of project manager is designated to work on this plan. and I'm one of them since a few months. And when doing a review of the situation, I found two concrete initiatives at different levels that started a few years ago. And I'd like to share with you these two initiatives. So the first one is a series of short videos made by the French Society of Physics and the National Center for Scientific Research. There's a web link here. So these videos are on portraits of women in research labs aimed at a large public, such as secondary schools. And these videos show a panel of jobs young people can find in laboratories, not only researchers, but also lecturers, engineers, and technicians. And they show that all these jobs can suit women very well too. So this is interesting because young girls have only a few female models in science, and these videos can play this role. They can also help to give confidence by fighting against gender stereotypes and self-censorship, and they can also generate vocations in science. So the second initiative was taken by a female colleague in my lab a few years ago to improve the visibility of women as well as their networks. So she observed on this table here in 2011 that there were 60% of PhD juries without any woman, and the other 40% had only one woman. So the idea was to strongly encourage the gender diversity in PhD juries with the rule of having more than one woman in each jury, excepting the director if it is already a woman. So this year, in 2020, this objective was reached, and you can see on the table that there's a significant improvement since the beginning in 2011. So people in my lab complained at the beginning. They said it was too hard, even impossible, but globally played the game at the end. And the results show that it is, of course, possible to find women to be part of a jury if one makes just a little effort, in fact. So to conclude, mentalities in France at last are changing, but very slowly. And to accelerate this change, I think this is necessary and even urgent to create and to maintain a positive feedback loop in order to generate more and more vocations of young girls for scientific jobs. And at the other side too, to really improve the equal access to job and the working conditions of women in scientific research, as well as their visibility, so that we don't sell only a dream to these young girls. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Sylvie, for a very interesting talk. Thank you, Sylvie, for bringing this French perspective to our round table. Just a brief question. So you mentioned that there is a difference in between of salaries of PhD students that comes from the industry, because men, they come to industry so they can negotiate. And if we talk about the universities, is there any difference, or in the university it's same? So there's the same.
Yes, in universities this is the same salaries, except that there are very few female candidates, in fact.
Yeah,
but the salary is the same. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much again, Sylvia.
Okay.
So now we're moving forward, and now the Dr. Alexandra Kalashnikova, she's a head of drug physics laboratory from YOFA Institute, that is a part of Russian Academy of Science, situated in St. Petersburg in Russia. The topic of your talk is, let's start from a simple handshake. And Alexandra will continue this phrase.
Yes, well, I'll try. So thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. It's very interesting to participate in such event, and well, I hope I will bring something new, some interesting perspective to this. So, in fact, I feel ashamed because I don't have a presentation, and one of the reasons for that is that I will be more.
Alexandra, just You muted yourself.
I'm sorry.
That's
Can you
perfect.
hear me now? Okay, great. So, sorry. So I have to apologize that I don't have a presentation. And one of the reasons for that is that although I am a scientist and I'm a woman, but to be honest, I never really invested much of my time into really understanding the gender problems which are existing in our society. So it's a shame, and I hope really I will learn a lot today. But therefore, I will be sharing my own experience, and these opinions which I will express is, of course, only my opinions, and probably not everyone will be agreeing with me. And a second kind of a disclaimer which I would like to make is that, in fact, I was extremely lucky person because I don't really have examples of real discrimination towards myself, and probably because I was always working with really brilliant people, brilliant scientists, starting from the, I don't know, fifth year of my university. But just a couple of words about myself. I was born in St. Petersburg. I graduated from ITMO University, but then I didn't stay at ITMO University. I moved to EOFA Physical Technical Institute, one of the largest research institutes in Russia. And then I left to Netherlands, and I did my PhD in University of Nijmegen. It was really great, 5 years of experience. Then I had some couple of short-term postdocs, but then I came back to EOFA Institute, and now I'm finally head of the lab here. And I would like to share first, so I can compare. I can compare the work environment and the atmosphere when you work in Netherlands, in that university where I was working, and when I work, for example, at EOFA Institute. These both organizations are of very high level of scientific research. But when I moved back to Russia from Netherlands in 2010, I had the impression that indeed the attitude, this atmosphere for being a woman in science in Russia is kind of worse. And in fact, it's not really true, but that's the impression which you all quite often get. And let me just make a simple one example. Sometimes, well, I have to attend some meetings, and typically I am not the only one female person there, or just well, in the minority, let's say. And I'm making such kind of little experiment for myself. When I come to the meeting, I just extend my hand for the handshake. And you must understand that in Russia, this is something really not typical, that men and women are shaking hands. And this is very strange because men and men, when they meet for a meeting, they always have a handshake, and men and women do not have a handshake. And I just look at the faces, at the facial expression of my colleagues, and I see some surprises, I see some frustration, okay, what should I do, or just some really like interest, like, oh, she wants to have a handshake. So that's one of the reasons why you kind of, if you start to work in a Russian group, you kind of feel like, oh, something is really wrong here. But in fact, I don't think it's really a case. So mostly it's just some kind of just this general. It's not really about the attitude towards female scientists, which is a problem. It's just, I think, in general, it's mostly cultural traditions, from some of which we really have to, I think we have to get rid from. So these are just some tiny cultural differences, cultural traditions, which are still very strong, and then they kind of make you feel uncomfortable. But I believe that, although, well, that's the cultural traditions, I think it's really changing very fast. And for example, in the beginning of our session, Ekaterina, you mentioned that quite often female lecturer, when he or she enters the room, she feels like attitude to herself is not the same as from 50-year-old male.
Basically, to see a different person. And sometimes when you come at the first few moments, they actually think that it's some kind of technician or someone that is announcing that there's going to be a lecture, and you're like, no, guys, I'm going to give a lecture now.
Okay. No, well, I have a completely different experience. I really see that the younger people, The people who are more open to the world, who really learn a lot, they travel, they meet people from all over the world and so on, I believe they don't have any more this problem. So I never had any problems because, well, I give lectures, and I see that if I give a good lecture, there is no problem at all, and no one expects me to be worse than my male colleagues. So yeah, that brings me to my second point. So although in Russia we do have this kind of feeling of the some kind of gender discrimination, it's not really, I would say it's mostly not really the case. It's more like just tiny this cultural features, and I think we will fix that, mostly because the younger people, they are very different. And they are more open-minded. And I think now we will see in a couple of, in 5 and 10 years, we will have really like a landslide. We'll see a lot of changes, a lot of improvement, and we really will have a really very fast development. And we will see that maybe, I think in 10 years, we will not be needing to come to this issue of the gender non-equality in, at least in Russian science. That's what I believe. So yeah, and the third thing I would like to just mention that, again, I was looking at the different groups and I was trying to understand, well, in principle, why we have less female students in science, why we have less female colleagues at academia. And in general, I have impression that if you go to the group where the general working environment is nice, when there is no hostile atmosphere in general, when people know what is a teamwork, when people are capable of respecting and valuing the contribution from each team member, there you typically don't, in such groups, you always see that the gender balance is more or less kind of okay. So you see more female students there and so on. So I think that in general, it's really a matter of building the right working environment, right atmosphere. And then again, all these gender non-equality issues, they are really kind of going away. So, well, that's were my thoughts. Well, and I probably was not so well prepared as my colleagues, but well, I hope that maybe some of my ideas can be useful. So, thank you.
Clear. Thank you very much. Let's thank Alexandra for her talk. I have just a brief question, Alexandra, because obviously, like, not everyone experienced their own patterns and impressions of students about who is male, who is the female teacher. But it's not that obvious to come to study physics or mathematics or even more complicated engineering. Just a brief question, why did you choose that? Your parents were kind of involved in mathematics, or because it's not an easy pattern. If we remember our school, the majority of girls, they went for different disciplines.
Yes, well, I think the reason was that both my parents are engineers, and for me, in general, it was not the issue to go to study. In fact, I started to study engineering. But yeah, I agree that especially in my times at school, so which was like, I don't know, a lot of years ago, I would say. Yes, of course, there was this kind of attitude. And for example, at school, you could really easily hear something. Well, it's a real example from my life that our geography teacher, for example, was never asking girls during the class like to answer some questions, because it was his belief that girls do not need to know geography. So it was his belief that men should travel and girls should stay at home. Well, but now I think it's not really possible, because since this 20 years, things changed so much that I think such kind of things are not really possible anymore. And we have to make sure that they are not possible anymore. And then we will be totally fine, I think, with gender equality.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alexandra, once again. So now we're moving forward to the last speaker in our roundtable session today, Dr. Viktoriia Rutckaia. She is a postdoctoral researcher at the Martin Luther University of Halle-Wittenberg in Germany. And the topic of your talk is, should I stay or should I go? I guess it's about science.
Yeah, you can hear me, yes?
Yeah, Victoria, could you just put it in the full well, thank you.
Yes. So yeah, similar to Alexandra, I didn't really think about these gender-related topics until last week. So, like the last time, the recent time I spent in doing my homework and researching things. Like myself, I also didn't face any gender discrimination or gender-related issues, or in my career, or at least I didn't notice them. So then I'm happy to participate in this roundtable. I'm going to share some experience in science from my life, and also some thoughts about why women may want to drop academic career. Because now at my postdoc stage, I'm thinking, what shall I do next, and how shall I proceed with my career? So of course, what I'm going to show is not the ultimate truth, just rather some points for discussion. And actually, that's how this presentation was born. And I need to acknowledge Anastasia Novikova. She's my good friend, and we spent some hours chatting and discussing many more aspects than I cover here. So yeah, my scientific career started in St. Petersburg in Russia, where I did bachelor and master programs in physics. In the end of my last year as a master student, I decided that I'm not yet ready to swim in the world of adult life. The carefree student life and this fun was so, I had just had so much fun, so I just wanted to continue that. So I also wanted to see the world, and I decided to continue my education as a PhD student in Germany, in International Max Planck Research School and Martin Luther University of Halle-Wittenberg, with a boss, supervisor, Professor Jörg Schilling. At that time, he was a junior professor, and actually in my career, he was my role model, and I saw which problems he was facing, although he is not a woman. Yeah, but yet. Just 2 months after the defense, I submitted a proposal for Marie Curie Fellowship, and while waiting for the positive results, and while preparing the grant agreement, I still worked in that group in Germany as a postdoc. And this year, I moved to New York and started a 3-year Marie Curie grant with Professors Daria Lu and Alexandra Kalashnikova. And this is also something new for me, because the policies here are slightly different than German ones, and the group is also, the gender diversity is also different. So right now here I'm like a lone woman amongst 30 guys of scientists. And it's a little bit difficult in the beginning of the project, where I have all possible questions. So, and the last year of the fellowship, I'll be coming back to Europe. So I'll proceed with again in Martin Luther University. And then I will apply for some advanced research grants to start my own group. It could be some Eminota program or ERC grants from Horizon Europe, or something else. Or I go to industry, or I don't know, I open my own cafe. So now I don't know what I'll do in 2023. So while I was researching for information about the gender diversity in science, I found this famous leaky pipeline image representing how number of women in science reduces with the advancement of the career. I was very surprised, but not because I didn't believe this image, but just because like 2 years ago, I was giving a talk about grant writing, and I showed exactly the same image to show that there are less and less positions in academia. So, and I wanted to promote the idea that grants is something that PhD students should consider in their career. And okay, the images are not really the same, but you see the identical trend. So I asked myself a question. If academia in general experiences this leaks all the way to professor positions, why should we consider girls separately? So what's the difference between what influences them differently from men? And this question I was trying to clarify to myself, and we'll share some hopefully interesting observations and thoughts today. So before looking at the leaks in pipeline, let's check what actually is being pumped at the entrance. There are, it's known that there are less girls and boys entering university with major in STEM. So this aspiration to STEM disciplines starts actually in early childhood. Studies have repeatedly reported that math and science are perceived as male domains. We also heard some talks just now. The other panelists, they mentioned this several times. So, and scientists, so for example, some kids were asked to draw a scientist. Maybe I think it was around 8 years old kids, and most of them picture them as men, but not a woman. So there is a stereotype starting from the early life. And another study asked secondary school students how they perceive physics, and not only physics, how they perceive STEM sciences like physics, chemistry, and math. And would they choose it as a career in future? They also asked to attribute some characteristics towards men, physics, chemistry, and math. Then they calculated some masculinity index by overlapping these characteristics describing the word men and describing these disciplines in STEM subjects. So in the end, young women who aspire to study a STEM major, they stereotype these three subjects as less strongly masculine than those young women who actually didn't want to proceed the career in the STEM subjects, which is shown here on the right. So this shows that from early childhood, there is an obstacle that we actually need to destroy in order to get more girls entering science, and then it will be more natural how to balance the women and men in science. So I personally never thought about physics as a male subject. I think this comes from the fact that I grew up with two older brothers. Most of the time they were left to watch after me, and of course I was trying to participate in their activities. Thus at the age 8-10, when they got their first computer, this ZX Spectrum, they immediately started doing some science, write basic programs. I also did some computer science, but in a slightly different way. And overall, I think the exposure to my brothers in some way made me behave like a boy, and therefore I was free from the male science stereotype. Sorry. Now let's go back to this pipeline. So let's check the leaks. Some numbers of girls decided to pursue career in STEM. Yeah, they enter university, it takes time. They are inspired and excited. And what happens next? Why almost half of the students, they drop science during this 10 years, which is the approximate time to finish undergraduate and graduate studies. So I'll try to list some factors that play a role in the decision making. First and most understandable for me is like while you do your study, you realize that academia work responsibilities are not what you expected. With my cartoon and movie-based views on scientist activities, I'm surprised to learn that majority of the time my professor has no idea what's happening in his lab. He is busy with writing proposals, he's hiring students, he's teaching, talking to funding agencies, administrating groups, writing reports, and of course reviewing some theses and articles. Then you may realize that the life of academia is highly competitive. Yeah, we all know that. Only a few positions matching your experience and expertise. You're lucky if the topic is in trend now because of the, let's say, scientific boards that help the funding agencies allocate some money. Depending on their interest, some positions will get more money than another, so some areas of research. And also the more you advance your career, the less open positions you will find. So like I talked once to a representative for German Physical Society, DPG, who makes decisions about funding projects. And he said that the policy in DFG is so that they prefer providing working opportunities for actually more people. So with equal proposals, they will more likely to fund 2 PhD students rather than 1 postdoc. And that creates, I'd say, more and more, the wider and wider funnel in the positions. And another aspect, so it's like here, is the uncertain path of the scientist. after your PhD, and before you get a permanent position, you spend maybe 5-10 years for postdoc life. So at least it's my perception of this career. Then during the postdoc, you need to look for a new position every 1 or 2 years. And since there are few positions, you cannot really choose the city, the country you want to go to. So you have to move yourself according to the available positions. And if you're lucky, you have to move your family with you. This is not only your decision, but your partner. And if you have kids, then of course, if they go to school, they have to change it and then make new friends. So just some points. And then usually science requires like a lot of dedication and involvement. To get results, you spend way more than 8 hours per week. And to meet, when you need to meet deadlines, you spend even more time in the lab. And lastly here is the money. So the money you get as a postdoc on average is lower than equivalent industry salaries. And if you travel to work in different countries, you pay taxes and social benefits to different governments. And you should think if, will there be a support for you in case your contract is over in one country and you're looking for a new position, and then you say the next contract starts in half a year. So how do you fund yourself during this time? So these are some, let's say, some uncomfortable points that everyone, I think, feels in science. And these aspects are valid for any person who builds career in science. So not only for women. And for women, additionally, there is more complexity in every point that I listed here. So it's like lack of role models, gender bias in hiring women, and unequal pay, just to name few. And moreover, the most stressful period of postdoc time coincides with the time where you actually, well, many women want to create family and get children. So by doing so, a woman loses like 1 or 2 years of her full power work. And this inevitably will be reflected in the CV and her competitiveness in the later stages. So lastly, I mentioned here that while academia is mainly populated by men, women will feel excluded. And also we heard this. And I gave an example that now I'm one girl among 30 guys. And do I feel this? Yes. And do I feel uncomfortable? No, or maybe, or actually yes. And I didn't formulate yet how I feel uncomfortable and why exactly, but there is this difference. I feel this compared to Germany. So finalizing and applying it to all for me, I have a dilemma now. I consider Germany as my scientific home country, and it doesn't have tenured positions, at least to my knowledge. You can apply for a junior professor position, which is a nice experience in leading your own group, gaining experience to further apply for a professor position, but it's temporary. It's like 5-6 years. Then you have to apply for a postdoc for a professor position, and it's basically kind of the same as when you apply for a postdoc position. And there will be opening applicants, and you can be rejected. And what do you do after that? And is it actually worth trying if there is a chance that you will be rejected? Should I try to develop my professor skills, or should I maybe try to put more effort in, let's say, industry-related skills? So these are some questions that I'm asking myself from time to time, and don't have yet answers to them. Yeah, so I may have sounded a bit depressive, so just I wanted to entertain you in the end. So with some numbers about actually this conference. So let's try to see if we have leaky pipeline among our participants of MetaNano 2020. I went through the conference program and listed here the number of men and women presenting research this week. And I also plotted this here in the right. These are the poster sessions, oral invited, keynote, and plenary talks. And I may try to assume that the longer you are in science, the more advanced your career is, and the bigger will be your contribution in this conference. So let's check the women to men ratio and see if women actually drop while advancing their contributions. On the poster sessions, there are 46% women to men ratio, which is a good number. That's actually matches this average numbers, at least in Europe, like 30% of the research positions, postdoctoral research positions, occupied by women. Then what happens next is like the ratio goes down for oral and invited talks. We have like quarter and 1/3 of women compared to men. And surprisingly, for keynote talks, there is just one woman for 35 men.
It's racist.
Yeah. So what a surprise in the end. Women are actually about equal in the heaviest category of plenary talks. So statistics was never my favorite subject, but it kind of tells me, or maybe my intuition, that there were some quota for women for plenary talks, which is actually one of the effective ways. We heard the talk in the beginning. It's one of the ways how to equalize the imbalance in STEM, at least now when we don't have much girls entering the STEM sciences. And also just for fun, I did the same for the technical committee, counted 3 women compared to 23 men, which is also more or less representative because it's known that the many boards have women underrepresented, that leads to gender biases. And like I know I've placed a fact somewhere that Germany actually has a governmental policy that companies, they have to employ 30% of women in their board panels, like board of directors, to eliminate this bias. And lastly, you can see that there is actually in the round table, there are 5 women compared to 0 men as a panelist, which is actually also a representative because like gender equity activist groups, they are the only groups where men are underrepresented, at least to my knowledge. So I think at this point I will stop and thank you for your attention. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Yeah, we did very much, Viktoriia. Thank you very much for the talk. And for all these numbers, it actually is very interesting to see it as numbers presented with images. So I just have a very brief question. So you're like a perfect example of the scientist that made a career in Russia, in Germany, in US, and planning to move forward somewhere. So do you really feel the difference in gender equality and the way you perceive of being female scientist in Russia, in Germany, and in US? Of course, I understand in Russia it was just the beginning. It was mostly studying, so it's a different story, but still. And where would you prefer being raised as a female scientist?
Well, let's say, yeah, that's one of the questions we discussed with my friends, is like assuming that I would spend my whole life in one of these countries that I had experience with, what would be the difference? And I was thinking that to my knowledge, towards what I already learned, that Germany is the most comfortable country for women in science, just because it has a lot of policies. Like at the governmental level, they employ a lot of activities to support women in science. And what we also heard about Netherlands, about just women, only women field positions for professor, that sounds interesting, at least for me. Yeah, and another thing is about what I was thinking is about this family planning. It's like this is some question that I asked to me, and comparing Germany to United States, I understand that like at this level, I'm not able to create a family in the United States, just because the salary of a postdoc is not enough to actually to get a child.
Help of government, only 6 weeks of the...
Yeah, maternal leave, 6 weeks. In Germany, it's 1 year. It's just amazing.
Sorry.
Yeah, I actually don't know about Russia. I didn't check numbers for Russia. Yeah, but so far I see Germany as the most appealing country for me staying in science.
Yeah, and I think that Ann-Katrin, she wants to comment on this. If you can unmute yourself, because you all had a career in different countries, Germany, Switzerland, everywhere.
Yeah, I would say I had the most positive experience in the US, so in California, because in the national labs, I had a female professor and the staff scientists were actually more women than men. So that gave me a bit more the feeling that it's normal in the lab. And I would say I had the least or the most negative experience in Germany, because yeah, to me it was always quite interesting that we had a couple of PhDs in physics, but no postdocs, no professors, and none of the other female PhDs I know continued in science. So I was the only one who did a postdoc. But that might also be related to the fact that most of the professors were more like 60-ish. And I have to say, I got a lot of comments that were, don't you want to bring us a coffee? And someone needs to redecorate the kitchen and something. And so we had female PhDs who didn't want to go into confrontation and really followed that. And also I have to say they had not such a good track record. And I always had the impression you had to fight a bit more for yourself, leading to the point that people described you more as being not so pleasant, or like maybe you should behave like the other women, some professors said, which I don't know, I thought it is a bit condescending. And I would say at ETH, they definitely try to have more women, and they hire more assistant professors here in Switzerland, but still the full professors, or especially here at mechanical engineering, are mostly men. And also at physics, I only know 3 women now. So it's a bit of a debate. And I applied a lot for Scandinavia and the Netherlands, because I heard from many people that it's very open there, and they really try to attract women and give you the feeling they want you in a way. So I think for me, it definitely mattered to go to a country where I have the feeling the society sees some equality, and especially at the universities, they really want to. So.
Yeah. Do we have other comments on this topic from participants of the roundtable? I mean, I also have an experience of working in Germany, but I have a very good experience as well, probably because we never had a coffee inside of the building. So we had to go anyways outside. So it was very nice. Max Planck University Institute in Heidelberg, a group of Professor Keitel. So it's true that we were outnumbered, but it was never an issue of feeling that there is something wrong of being a woman, that's for sure. But I have a very tricky question. So during this roundtable, we're discussing that there is lack of female in science, right? And it's correct. It's correct from numbers, and we actually don't know why. We think that it comes from family, because we are raised with this wrong pattern that it's not a girl's future. It's not a girl's path to follow science or STEM disciplines. But if you take a look at literature, for example, we don't see a lot of male there either. So does it work in the same way? Is it us females that we are pushing men out, or it just also comes from the society pattern that it's not for male? Has anyone something to comment? Alexandra? Yeah.
Well, maybe I don't know, I don't have an answer to your question, because, well, I think we should have invited someone from that area. But I think that what we mostly have to look at is yeah, definitely in the beginning, there are more female students in these humanitarian sciences. But what about the, let's say, professorship level? Is it also there, the ratio still preserved, that there are more female professors than male professors in that areas? Because that's, I think, what we have to look at.
I think so, because I actually, as my second education, I made a Bachelor of Art in the Sorbonne. And anyways, we have more females there, that's for sure. Maybe it's not 5% female to men like in science, but still it's unbalanced. So I guess actually it comes, of course, there is a problem of male considering that they're more suitable for science. But I guess it comes from the society pattern that is not from 20th century, 19th, 15th, 13th, whatever. So for ages, women were doing literature and men, they were studying engineering. And it's for sure, imagine in 50s doing engineering, like huge resistors, very complicated, electronics. Today, it's a different story. We talk about iPads now. So electronic engineering is not the same as it used to be. So that's why we suppose that women should come and should be part of this society. But I'm not sure they really wanted that before. So it's hard to find the right decision. Why? It just, when we come to the science, we see that the pattern is a completely wrong one. But I don't even know how we can improve it. Probably we should educate kids in a different way. We should do more workshops, more summer schools. We should, maybe it also comes from books. It comes from movies. It comes from, take a look on the Cinderella movie, whatever. So
don't you think that the younger generation, the one which is coming after us, let's say, they don't really follow the patterns anymore? Because, well, the society is really changing, and if probably 30 or 50 years ago, one who doesn't follow the pattern which society dictates is really arable, but now it's more like, yeah, there are less these patterns because people are more free to choose their path. So I'm really optimistic that it will be changing, because in general, all the attitude of the society and how we feel in society is really changing. But that's just my opinion. I think it's really changing a lot, right? Really during the last 10 or 20 years, and we can see it. So.
I would just like to ask Sylvia, do you see this difference in France? Because as you know, as you mentioned, you started in when it was a different France. So is there any evaluation of this attitude towards women's place in science? Sylvie?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so the question is about the evolution of the global.
Now, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, how do you see the perspective, not only France moving towards the balanced ratio of female and male scientists, but in general?
We talked about models for young people, and in France there was a study on books for little primary schools, and let's say, I think that 10 years ago, when you look at math books or scientific books, there was almost no representation of women. You only see men, scientific men with a white shirt and gray hair. And now you begin to see some representation of women in science. So okay, things are changing, but very, very slowly, I think. And you were talking also about literature, but in literature, this is the same. In fact, the models are only masculine in general. There's no there are a lot of women writers, but we don't speak about them. So I think I have the example of the University of Lille in France. So there's a person who is in charge of the diversity of gender, and she managed to change the name of the amphitheater, because there are 400 amphitheaters and almost 400 names of men for this amphitheater. But she managed to change half of these names by women's names. So you see, this is improving, but very, very slowly.
I just wanted to give an opportunity to everyone who is listening to us to raise a hand and to ask the question if there's any.
Maybe I can comment about the literature question. As what I heard an interview with one lady from a professor in computer science in the United States. And she said that back in the 80s, when she did her education, there were actually more or less equal numbers of women and men in the computer science. But then with the development of all technologies, the job market just jumped up, and this computer science career suddenly became very prestigious and very well paid. And she argued that this, let's say the level of the jobs, of the money that are in the job market, they attract men more than women. And it could be one of the idea to explain why in literature, at least to my knowledge, I'm not very familiar with literature positions, but maybe they are, let's say, not so well paid as scientific, so high tech, because they are not backed up by the high tech companies. So, and another thing that maybe at this very moment there is some round table with men panelists discussing how to attract women in literature. That would be funny. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So, and regarding the students, I just wanted to ask, because everyone, I guess the majority of female scientists presented today, they had an experience of guiding students, right, in science. Did you feel this pattern, this wrong pattern in the students? Of course, I understand this wrong pattern if we talk about 70 years old professors. It's probably the case. But if you take a look and 25 years old in the group, do they show this pattern? Ann-Katrin?
That they behave in a way?
I mean, of course, when we talk about this intention of people imagining that it's not for female to be part of STEM disciplines, we all imagine that it's 50 years old man thinking like that, or 40 or something, or grown-ups or established professor. But if we take a look on just students, just not undergrad, but master students, do they show this pattern?
So I had actually more female students with a thesis than male students. Maybe they also like they prefer to join, I don't know, a female PhD or postdoc. But they all said they don't want to go into science because it's too hard, it doesn't pay enough, and it's annoying with moving around and everything. But I guess as Viktoriia explained, that's a general issue, and I think this extreme competitiveness to some sense also just attracts a very specific character type in a way. I don't know if this is more prone to males or females, but I would say in general that it is a job that, in the same way as if you have a nurse or so that is somehow associated with caregiving, that if you want to fight through a postdoc and getting a prestigious professorship, you might also want to be a bit more tough. And so I would say that can be associated as negative female behavior in a way. But I would say that was mostly criticized also, yeah, maybe by grandmas or parents in a way. But I have the impression that many young girls are also very much empowered by, I don't know, they speak about their role models being Michelle Obama and Beyonce, and I don't know. So like it has an impact that you don't just are a cool woman if you're, I don't know, competing for a bachelor in a reality TV show, but you're also really cool if you give great talks and they read the books from Sheryl Sandberg. And so I feel like the role models really have an influence that you maybe have to be tough, but it isn't necessarily not ladylike in a way.
Yeah. And we got a question in the chat, so let me read it for everyone. It is maybe that for some biological reasons that less men interested in social science and less women interested in STEM. Because as a man, I can see that less men are interested in art or social science, and that has nothing to do with society. It's just what they are interested in. Well, I'm not a biologist. I don't know. So I also wanted to ask Daria, because she's vice rector, she's representing the administration, and she can know better than anyone from us. Do you see that the ratio of female students is becoming more and more balanced in ITMO University? And if you could compare ITMO University to Russia in general, because you spoke a lot about BRICS universities, and I'm not sure that we should just talk about BRICS universities, because I think that we should involve all universities together, because obviously the mathematical background in BRICS countries is very, very strong, and it's controversial for the whole world that they will work together. But do you see this pattern changing in ITMO and in BRICS countries?
Thank you. I do see that it's changing in ITMO, definitely. But we need to underline that ITMO is very with a very narrow focus university, with a very narrow focus in AT photonics, laser technologies, new materials, etc. And it's changing because it is cool to be a tech student right now. And this is the trend, as I can see that. But it definitely depends on the field, because in a lot of different Russian institutions where the major programs are around international relations and, I don't know, public relations, you will see 90% girls. So, but I do believe that the generation Zeta that we were talking about recently does have different approach to STEM, and does have different approach to computer science, and girls pay more and more attention to this tech disciplines, modules, and programs. I do see the difference at ITMO, and statistics shows that it is changing step by step.
Okay, thank you very much. So
do you see that there is a hand on from Mikhail Petrov?
yeah, I do see, but we can ask him to unmute. Can you hear us, Michael?
Yeah, it's okay. It's just a part of a
Finally, we got one male on the round table, so we're balanced now. Because you saw we had a perfect ratio from Viktoriia Rutckaia that we're in balance here. Can you unmute yourself? You cannot now?
Yeah, sorry, I just pushed the wrong button. Yeah, thank you for giving a voice.
Yeah, so we had a very, very fruitful conversation today, and we had perspectives from United States, from Switzerland, from France, from Germany, from Russia, from different generations with different view, but still we believe that we should do some more probably workshops, some small summits about the gender role in general, so we could.
Sure, and we do. Here we are, so that's yeah, why we are here. Fantastic. And I've got a comment. So I wanted to somehow agree with what Sasha Kalashnikova was saying regarding the making this, how to say, protected and comfortable environment for doing science for women. And I think Ann-Katrin also mentioned that in a way. So I feel that it's important, looking just around people around me. And of course, science today in academia is not a safe place, neither for women nor for men. But of course, it hits women more. But it's not a safe place, absolutely. This is one of the things. But I've got maybe a question to Daria Kozlova, who is now there.
I'm here listening.
Yeah.
I'll just turn on the light because it's getting dark here.
Yeah. I'm just asking. So whether I don't know what is the situation in university. with Daria, we often discussing how to improve the university ITMO and also how to recruitment and admission process is done. So whether any, how to say, in these technical universities, technical oriented universities like ITMO is, should we have any supporting programs directed on that? I don't want to say any quote that there should be some numbers, but does that happen somewhere? Should we have that here or things like this?
Our point is that there should not be special programs for ladies, for girls, to attract more girls, but we should highlight the success of our girls, female students, and give a sign to our prospective students that STEM, IT, photonics is for girls as well. So our vision here is not to do special courses or special summer camps. Our vision here is to promote how happy and fruitful and comprehensive and beneficial education and life at ITMO could be for female as well for male students. And this is our vision. So to communicate the results and to give a sign that girls are welcome here.
Yeah, thank you. So verifying. Yeah, that was one of the comments and question. Yeah.
And as Michael, you're participating at our roundtable, women roundtable. Do you have something to say about this unbalanced gender? For example, probably when you were studying in your lab, you were the only, there were only male scientists, right? Or it might be one or two females. So can you explain us the attitudes, the atmosphere?
So I think the balance was more or less proportional to the balance in the classroom. So in my lab, so it was more or less proportional to the classroom, and in the classroom it's like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. I mean, I don't know the numbers, the exact numbers. Yeah, but I didn't see any special atmosphere, any special problems. Actually, and actually Viktoriia Rutckaia, and I'm very glad to see her from this point of view. She was in our lab, and so when I was like in my PhD studies, so I hope she didn't feel any pressure from my side, but we should ask her. In my group, for example, I'm not trying, but it's naturally happens that, and gender balance is 60 to 40, 60 women and 40 men. I mean, person, not people. So I think there are 6 girls and 4 men, something like this. So at least it's half to half, and it's all right. I can't see any. So there are different characters and different things people are good at, and I wouldn't say that I can highlight that men are better or something like this. But this is my personal vision or feeling.
Yeah. We have one more question from Professor Anna Baldicho, if we can make her join. How does it work exactly?
We should unmute her. Yeah,
I unmuted her. So Anna, can you please?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for a very nice, fruitful discussion. I really enjoy watching it. Thank you very much, ladies, for sharing your experience. I have a question, as again, a female scientist, as a professor. What's most of you mentioned that you actually never experienced this, that you are a minority and that you are underrepresented or you are treated different way as a woman, if I understand. But haven't you noticed that female in the scientific world constantly need to adapt their behavior to the male behavior all the time. So one of you mentioned that, for example, shaking hands. Yeah, so it's normal for me, for example, yeah, always to shake hands, you know, with a man at every meeting. Let me maybe give you an example. Look, what I mean by we need to adapt our behavior. So, for example, I really like to have a makeup, to dress nicely, to have high heels, but I cannot wear it, you know, at the research meeting or the business meeting with the head of departments or head of the other labs or other professors, because I immediately feel that the tension is different to me, and I'm not maybe even considered seriously when I, you know, express my opinion or I set the goals and the targets. The same with my research group. So I need to basically wear some unisexual outfit. Another thing, another example is, for example, if you are a beautiful single professor and you are new at the department and you need, for example, to you know, establish some professional connection relationship with your male colleagues, you cannot easily say, oh, John, nice to meet you, I'm a new professor, let's go for a drink, because John immediately will understand it in a different way, or like in parallel. And I can give you, I've never even thought about this until like when I was like a PhD student in Ireland, and my female supervisor was sharing with me one of her stories when she was experiencing, like she had some issues and she needed to discuss this with the head of department. And it was very difficult to schedule an appointment with him. And one of her male colleagues, another professor, suggested, say, well, oh, that's not a problem. Like, you know, invite him for a beer, a drink. And she said, Alan, how can I invite him for a beer? And then Alan posed, and yeah, that would be inappropriate. So between males, they can easily like invite, you know, each other and then chat. The same as like we females, yeah? So we can, if I know that this is a woman, a female colleague, and I want to establish like a closer professional relationship with her, I can come and invite for a coffee, for a drink, and then we can chat like ladies and then get, you know, maybe become friends and then, you know, discuss some mutual project that we can do together. But we have this sexual barrier that you cannot basically communicate with male colleagues the same way as with your female colleagues. And you actually need to adapt your behavior and patterns in accordance to the males. What do you think? Like, just, didn't you notice this? I'm just interested.
I think Viktoriia.
Comment on that. So, and also answering to Misha's question, that once you, thank you for the question, mentioned this, actually, I did notice that, and that's present, yeah, that in behavior in the male group, first of all, yeah, I don't know what to wear and how to behave, so not to be inappropriate. Although in my education and in the lab, like with Misha, for example, I always had only, let's say, a lot of positive attention, so I never felt that it was inappropriate. But yes, there is a something that the tendency that I behave more like a man. I copy their behavior, their style, just because I don't have examples. I don't have anyone who could actually show me that there could be different things. And based on, let's say, movies, they are usually more negative examples than positive. And that's why we need more role models. And I also want to come back to the question that we had about the biology STEM, that the interests are different for women and men, that I think the interests are formed by the society. So that's when my relatives ask me how, you know, this question, like when you have to write a thesis, like you meet a friend and the first question you get, are you ready? When will you finish? So the same thing for women, at least in my life, that whenever I meet any of my relatives or classmates, they would ask me, so are you yet married? Are you yet not? Yeah, are you already married? Or when do you plan having kids? And this is just so pressing. So it's just something that's constantly there, and it's like drops of water pushing on your brain. And this is something that shows that society actually influences the decisions of the women in science and their choices in the field, in the labs, in the career. Yeah, so I hope I didn't say too many random things. Okay, thank you.
But I think also that it's all very cultural dependent, you know. So in Russia, it's, you know, when women look beautiful and like it's more, you know, it's more proper than, for example, than in the United States, as you probably noticed. It's a different, or in Germany, yeah.
And Ann-Katrin, she has her comment.
Sorry, but I had the comment at the conference that I was there with a researcher from IBM. So she does computer science, really accomplished. And then 2 professors came to us and told us, and we're both married, but they approached us and said, yeah, maybe we should, like, if we dress like that, that raises too much attention. And it was a conference in September in southern Italy. It was really, really warm, and we wore long pants, but like maybe not, something that was appropriate for the temperature, maybe to some extent. But they were really approaching us and then giving us a feeling that we're, I don't know, somewhat inappropriate there, which I think we weren't in any way, but it just gave us the feeling that we were already excluded from the discussion, because then in the end, you just feel so much like you don't belong there in a way. That it's super uncomfortable to go to the conference again, or you then really adjust, like, what do I like, what do the other people think about that, which I think is way too much pressure. In the end, we should only care about science. And I mean, some people show up in like sweatpants, and I could also say I don't think this is respectful in a sense. But it's easier to go to the maybe still a bit unconfident minority, which might especially change when we have more women who are professors and go there and have their own showing and how it works. But if we're still this tiny minority and only the youngsters in the field, then it can shape you strongly.
Yeah, thank you.
So, women, 1 male. Do we still have some questions and angles that we want to highlight? We still have 1 question in the chat, actually, but it's not roundtable related, so I'm not sure. It's about the bias. Oh, okay. So there is Alexandra.
May I just, if I may, I just wanted to comment on this question from the chat. I don't know from who was it, about that maybe it's not a social thing, that women are more interested in arts, for example. And
it was from Mohammed Mustafa.
Yeah, okay. Well, what I noticed, for example, from the students who are coming to our lab, in the beginning, even if you give to someone a very interesting task, in the beginning they are not, even if they're interested, it's very difficult for them to get involved, because to get involved in something, to become interested in something, really, you have to start to understand this. And now, imagine if in society, from the very young age, girls are always brought to some exhibitions and theaters, and guys are sent to some classes to do robotics. Of course, by the age when they reach school, they will, guys will understand more in robotics, and girls will understand more in science, in art, and then they will continue. So therefore, I think the fact that still in most of societies, the girls are more interested in arts and the guys seems to be more interested in science, it's mostly because from the very early age, we don't give the kids real opportunity to explore everything. So then I think that's where we have to start. So if we will start like this, then probably I think the gender balance will be different, or we will see some other effects. But that would be really interesting to see how it develops if we really start from early age and given the kids really the opportunity to try many things.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that, because it absolutely comes from their society pattern. Oh, we have another comment. There is Mario Marquez who has a comment on the previous question on the biology. So everyone can read it, but I will read it for the public. I would like to comment on the biology question from earlier and on the policies that encourages the hiring of women. It is not about biology, but society. The society tends to encourage men into doing science jobs and women to do art jobs. This is precisely what you're trying to fight. Moreover, people are not like magnets. Opposites do not attract. A female professor tends to get more applications from female students than male professors. This is why it is important to have more female professor positions. They will attract more female students. Do you have something to comment? Viktoriia?
Well, I totally agree with Mario. Just funny remark, Mario is actually supporting me here. He's my boyfriend, and he is representing a man in science, and he's a theoretical physicist.
Okay. Super. Thank you very much, Mario. You have a brilliant girlfriend. We need to bring back the Michael. Michael, can you raise your hand, please, so we can... Anna is left, Michael's not here, because obviously the topic is very interesting and fulfilling. But
yeah, I'm sorry, I got lost in the buttons.
No, we're here.
Yeah.
Here's Anna, thank you very much. So I was just telling that it was really fruitful and fulfilling, this discussion that we had, because we had different perspectives from different countries, from different generations, and we kind of even found first step in a solution is to change the bias of the society from the very beginning. And as Sylvie mentioned, very interesting that in France, this pattern is changing. So they're changing books for kids, and probably in 10, 15, 20 years, this pattern is going to be distinct.
Yeah, Ekaterina, thank you very much. I think so. I think it's one of the important things is just to what we do right now is to talk about this, at least. Yes. So it might seem that it doesn't give much, but actually it gives, because there are people that listen while we are talking about this. We change the world. So yeah, and I'm glad that you were ready to participate in this event. We organized it quite in a short time, and hopefully we'll be able to do that at our next conferences and do some kind of activities dedicated to that, to support women in science and their activities in physics and in photonics and whatever we do here. Yeah, I would be glad if we will have some future editions of such events, right? At least we could consider them. Yeah, thank you for your participation here.
Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for organizing this amazing panel. We were very happy to participate.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good, bye.
Yeah, bye, thank you.